Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Andrew Roach and I'm the MC for the evening. And we're very proud to bring you the 2025 International Recital by the Queensland Highland Piper Society. The Highland Piper Society has been able to put this on for the last 15 years in conjunction with the Lower Clarence Scottish Society. So I'd like to thank the partnership that we have with them so that we can share costs in bringing the greatest pipers to Brisbane and Maclean for the Easter period. I'd like to thank the Queensland Highland Piper Society Committee, who continue to keep putting on excellent events for young piping and drumming. We had a meeting the other day and someone reminded me that we have put on more drumming contests than any other state in the last 12 months. So we're certainly turning the corner, and having evenings such as this is just proof in itself that we're doing something right as compared to the other states in Australia. Tonight is only possible because of the fantastic support and sponsorship that we receive. And I have mentioned the Lower Clarence Scottish Society, but tonight wouldn't have happened without McCallum Bagpipes, and in particular Kenny McLeod and Stuart McCallum, who have been incredibly supportive in helping us or donate a set of Duncan McGilwray pipes by Dalby that Stuart's going to play tonight. He's playing them tonight and also in Maclean, and he played them last weekend in Basel. But those pipes are now being played for 3 weeks, played by him, and then they'll be sold. So we're having an auction for these pipes, so you'll actually have a set of pipes that's been played by Stuart Little. So I think that's a first for anywhere in the world. So I really like to thank McCallum Bagpipes, Duncan McRae Bagpipes by Dalby, of course, and without that, that wouldn't have happened to bring him out. This is the biggest audience I think the Queensland Highland Piper Society has ever had, so congratulations, you've outdone everything that we've done in the past, so well done. Stuart's been out to Australia several times. The first time was in 1996, where he went to Perth and played in the Australian Pipe Band Championships with a band from Canberra. And first time to Maclean was in 1997. He's been to Brisbane several times to teach at workshops, but this is the first time he's come to Australia with his entire family. So big shout out to Stuart's kids and his partner Sabina up the back of the room somewhere. Thank you so much for giving us your time to come out. So we're not here to listen to me rabble on, so what we'll do is we'll start bringing through our pipers. So tonight we've not just got Stuart, we've got some great local young talent that are coming through. We've got 3 local pipers that will support Stuart tonight, and the first that will come out is our youngest. It's Austin Irving. He's 13 and he's only been playing bagpipes for 2 years. He's a young pupil at BBC under Pipe Major Jamie Hawke, and he's probably super nervous with the size of the crowd here, but he's got Pipe Major Little out the back tuning his drone, so I think he'll be fairly confident. I'll go and grab him in 2 seconds, but Austin's going to play 2 tunes tonight for us, and the first tune's going to be Inver Gordon's Welcome to QE2, Queen Elizabeth II, and then he's going to stop, and I want you to give a massive round of applause, so that when he plays his second tune, which is Rory McLeod the Jig, he'll go off feeling 100 foot tall and bulletproof. So Austin's playing a set of borrowed bagpipes. He's borrowed them from Nick Shelburne, they're a set of old lorries, and he's playing on a synthetic bag and easy drone reeds, and a brand new chant that his mum and dad bought for him for Christmas from RG Hardy, which is a new Infinity chanter, and it's sounding pretty good. So that's his setup. For 2 years in, let's see how we go. But I think he's going to do a fantastic job. I'll just go and grab him now and say he's on. When he comes out, let's put a big round of applause for him.
Yeah.
tough, you know. A 13-year-old playing in front of a big crowd like this, that's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show you what a great thing Brisbane Boys College is doing for our piping and drumming scene here in the Brisbane area. I think there are over 100 now in the program, and more importantly, Stevie and Jamie are taking the band across to compete at the Worlds this year. So I think this is the first time they're actually travelling to compete just, you know, in the Worlds. Normally they've gone across, and I think, hate to count how many tattoos they've been to over the years, but they generally go and do the tattoo, which they kill themselves for 5 weeks, marking time and playing 1,000 different tunes, and then go and squeeze in a bit of competitions on the side. So I think this is the first time that they're travelling overseas just to play at the World Championships and the couple of other championships that they're there for as well. So we wish them well, and you can see if there's kids like this coming through, they're going to do extremely well, and fingers crossed, if it's not this year, in a few years' time we might start seeing some great prizes. So I'll put your hands together, because I think BBC are great. So to follow on, our next young piper is Nick Shelburne, who is the current BBC pipe major. He's 17. He's been playing pipes for a long time, and been coming to me for lessons, and he's now got Jamie as well. So he's got the best of both worlds. He's actually got someone who's very technical and does the right thing, and me, I'm a bit more relaxed and easy bag. I might take him away a bit more often on competitions. But Nick's been fantastic. He's been winning a lot of prizes in the junior grades, and he's now in B grade. And he's travelled several times to New Zealand, and he's down to Victoria. We've taken him for a few competitions as well. So he's really keen to keep progressing his piping. He's thinking about for a gap year next year. We're not quite sure. He keeps changing his mind, Mum, doesn't he? But anyway, we'll get to a point where he'll land at the end of this year, which is Year 12, the most important year. Just happens to be going across to play at the Worlds, so you'll juggle that in between. He's going to play 2 sets for us tonight. He's going to play a slow air called Anata Nagale. He's going to go into the Mad Hornpipe, so this is his first crack at this tune. It's an awesome tune. And then he's played 2 jigs, the Listener Gun and Troy's Wedding. He's then going to probably a little break. He might retune his pipes. And then the next tune he plays is the 6/8, and it's his own composition, and he wrote it for his mum, Jean Marie. Jean Marie's in the audience. So the first tune that he plays in the second set was written for his mum, and then he'll finish it off with a few reels, Jack Daniels Bartender, Smelling Fresh, and The Wise Man. So that's the tunes he'll play tonight. He's playing on a set of old Thao pipes, a set of pipes I found under a bed here in Brisbane. Same old story, but it's true. I do find them under beds. About early 1900s, silver and ivory, German silver that are on them. Got an awesome bass drone. I think he's playing a mixture of droneries, I can't remember now, but he's also on an Infinity Chanter. Probably one of mine, I think, that I've seemed to have lost. But anyway, it's in good hands now. So I'll just chase Nick up, and we'll give him a round of applause when he comes on the stage. it's a good start to the evening. And our next pipe round is Stuart Little. So he's just going to run some air through the pipes and get them right before he comes out. But just want to touch on Nick again. You know, pipe major, year 12, got lots going on. Going with the band over to Scotland, you know, that's an enormous amount of pressure on a young guy, and he's doing such a good job. So it's awesome to see him do what he just did there. The other thing I wanted to shout out about Nick is that he was the first ever boy from BBC and first ever my student to play at Pipe Idol. So I'm not sure if everybody know what Pipe Idol is, but it's run during Piping Live Week at the Worlds, and there's 4 pipers every day at lunchtime, and they pick the best piper and then they go through and play in the final on the Thursday evening. So Nick was the first piper on the Monday, and it was tough. It was freezing cold, you know, all the opposite things to what you used to hear in Brisbane, but he did a magical job, and I'm hoping he's going back to do it again this year, because I think he got a bit of a taste, and the tunes he played there at the end were some of the stuff that he did on the stage there. So it's a great thing for Brisbane, and there might be 1 or 2 others that will play with him this year, I hope, if we can convince them. So he's done a brilliant job. So our next piper, of course, is Stuart Little, which is what you've all come to listen to. But Stu's going to come out and play for about 25 minutes, and at the end of this session, that session, we're going to actually have a question and answer with me on the stage. And run through a couple of things. Hi, Laurie. Run through a couple of things that's important to him and also the band. So, Inverary District Pipes and Drums is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. So that's not a very long period in the scheme of things, but in 20 years they've done an enormous amount. So we're going to have a bit of a chat once he finishes, so he'll be a bit hot and sweaty, and so I'll go easy on him at the beginning. But I've got lots of questions that we can ask him just to pull some information out about the band, so stuff about his pipes and stuff about his solo career, and just fill in some of the blanks, because you guys often just hear him on the stage and hear how great the music is, but there's so much more behind the music, and I'm just hoping to bring out some of that information for you a bit later.
Cool. There we go.
So when I put my shirt on, it's not this one, I put my shirt on out the suitcase last week, and it was really tight. It was my good lady's blouse. So then I went to the store in Brisbane and got something slightly bigger, but maybe a bit too big. But anyway, at least it's ironed.
That's right. I'll let him get his breath back. But again, people just come to listen to you play these great tunes, and I suppose we just touch on a couple that you didn't talk about just then. But your MSR set that you play, I've known you for a long time, and you've got a particular set of tunes that you love playing. But a few years ago, you decided to throw in the Glen Truam, or the Strathspey Bay, and I forgot the name of that reel, but it's bloody hard. Why do you do that to yourself? Like, we're getting old now, man. Why?
Yeah, you're right. Glen Truam was the Strathspey Bay I played. The reel's called The Highlanders Institute by Peter MacLeod. I'm really impressing myself here if I remember names and composers, but anyway, these tunes sort of jump at you. You might hear somebody else play them, or you might be going through books and trying them. But it's nice to play tunes that are maybe not so heard so often. But Glen Truam was written by Donald MacLeod, which seems to feature a lot in my tunes that I select. He's a great, I think probably must be my favourite composer. I love all the composers, but it certainly seemed to be at the forefront of the repertoire.
Well, we'll come back to some of those influences and stuff a bit later on, but it's great to have you back in Australia, and I suppose this is a unique trip for you, because normally you jump on a plane and you've got a long list of things to do, teaching and schools and more recitals and all that sort of stuff, but this one seems a bit laid back. Is it becoming a family man? Is it great having a holiday with your family, and piping's on the side now?
Yep. That's great, yeah. Off the plane, boom, 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 roller coasters,
So what are some of the things you did this week?
Yeah, the SeaWorld, Warner Brothers, Tangalooma, the zoo. It was just incredible.
Pools. Yeah, lots of pools.
Oh yeah, lots of pools, swimming. I think everybody enjoyed it very much so far.
But that's a great thing, because you've been so many times and you haven't seen great things. But going out to Tangalooma, like swimming around the reefs, the artificial reef out there, was good.
Oh,
yeah,
beautiful.
top thing. So that's great. So look. There's more of that if you'd like to come back more often, and these guys would love to hear you play more often. So just keep that at the back of your mind, Sabine. There we go. Listen, most importantly, this year is a celebration of 20 years of Inverary. And I think it's quite special, because there's someone at the back of the room here that was one of the first couple of members. And if anyone saw the YouTube clip that we did in 2013 for the Ascension concert, right at the beginning of that there was 2 pipers and a drummer. And just tell us how that came about, and of course give Laura a shout out while you're here, please.
Laura Johnson, yes, in the crowd there. Is she there?
Yeah, up the back.
Way up the back, aye. Yes, this is way back in 2003. I wasn't actually looking to create a band or anything, but I did want to give back to the community and start teaching night classes in the town of Inverary. And it started off, went around all the schools, tried to recruit a lot of young ones, and very successful. We recruited about 30 the first year, and maybe 10 were left by the end of the year. So we recruited again in the next year, and same thing, a few of them drifted off, but we were left with a nice little core of dedicated youngsters, Laura being one of them. And she came up to me one time at one of the practices in the school, and she said, Stuart, can we march? Aye. So then next thing, her brother Graham decided he was getting lessons on drumming somewhere else, and he came along for a wee tune. The janitor that let us into the school found an old bass drum, so he got a strap from a golf club, what do you call them? The bags. Aye.
Yeah.
And put it together. So the Janny, there was actually 3 young pipers and Graham, and we had the first ensemble. And we used to go and just play at little things, down the street. I remember the Shinty Club. Do you know what Shinty is? No, it's a local game where you beat the crap out of everybody with a stick and a ball. They won a really great prize, the Camanachd Cup, so we had the privilege of playing them up the street. That was one of our sort of memorable gigs that we did. And
What was the first competition that you did?
so it grew from that. We spent 2004 forming a band, and we took day trips. We went to one of the majors just as a day trip to check out what it was all about. And 2005 we decided to give it a shot, and we thought Cowell Games 2005, why not just go in the deep end? So we registered the band with the association. They gave us a number. That number is 666. We had to borrow drums. We had a mixture of kilts. We had to get permission to wear different kilts. We competed in a group of 19 novice juvenile bands. 2 of them didn't play, so there was 17. I just said to the guys, like, just go out and enjoy it. If we come second last, then that's a start, you know. And we came 13th, which was to us all, it was ecstatic. All the support we had from the parents and the locals were incredible. And we marched down the street. We were sponsored by the Co-op Funeral Parlour. So all great starts, you know.
Just leave that 30. We're going to come back to that 30. I've got another question for you there. But, just the success of the band, like, we'll just move it along a bit where you won the World Championships in Novice Juvenile. You won the World Championships in Juvenile. You then won it in Grade 2. And it's pretty much all those kids that you brought through, wasn't it, every year? So, what was that like? And you kept up a tradition, and just tell everyone what that tradition was after you won the world, because not many people, know what you do afterwards. Don't talk about jumping in locks. Not that one. No, the other edition of the band playing down. Yeah. So just talk about that.
Well, I think at the end of 2006 we had our first prize, a third prize at Cowell Games that season, and brilliant. And then the following season we came back. We had a nice hard winter. We were working really hard. 2007 we ended up winning our first championship. In fact, we won 4 of the 5 championships that year, and we got upgraded to juvenile. Anyway, it's always reverse psychology with me. I says, you're not going to make the top 6. You might as well forget it. Just go out and enjoy yourself, you know. Well, the buggers, they did it, you know. I think the forfeit was, I'll eat my pipe case if you break the top 6, you know. And sure enough, they did. So anyway,
How did it taste?
oh well, aye. So we had a wee Kaylee at the end of that year. We, I think it was that year. Can't remember. We had a nice cake made with an exact replica of my pipe case. So anyway, up to the juvenile grade, already you think, oh my goodness, it's going to be tough. It was, but we won 4 of the 5 majors in 2008, including the Worlds. And again, I can't remember what I said. I think it was. Did I? Oh, was that the drumming one? No.
I think it was. Laura, help us out. Was it drumming? Yes.
Aye. You're not going to make the top 6 in juvenile. If you are, I'm going to enter the All Ireland Solo Drumming Championship. And sure enough, the buggers did it. So I entered the All Ireland Solo Drumming Championship. Alan Tully, the pipe major of St Lawrence O'Toole, was very grateful that he played for me. And I came second last.
You're on your way up. It's good.
Oh, is there any drummers in the house here?
I think there was a couple sneaking.
But-
That was good. Yeah, there was a couple sneaking.
I tell you, that was tough. Playing in front of a judge, my goodness, my arms just froze. Anyway, that was that. And then
Great day.
we asked the group, where do you want to go next? Do you want to stay in juvenile? Because 1 or 2 players was going to age out, turn 18. They wanted to stick together, so we applied to jump over to the adult grades. And oh my goodness, they decided to put us into grade 2, which no way, you know. So, but we were lucky enough now to introduce a couple of adult players, including Stephen McWhirter, who is our current leading drummer. Dougie Campbell, who was the pipe sergeant, and yeah, you're not going to make it. You might as well forget grade 2, right? I mean, just get the experience, you know. And we won all 5 friggin' majors, you know. So and the forfeit for that was, I think it was that that one?
Well, I remember like you guys played as brown cows across Perth Highland Games before. I think it was the week before the Worlds, and just for fun, just for giggles, you were grade 2. You played up in grade 1 in 2010, and you won the grade 1 Perth Highland Games. So just to add to it, you know. And so, what did they make you do after you won grade 2?
I can't remember. Was that when I was going to run down the street naked or something?
No, that was it. Yeah. But so like it does happen. So sometimes he does some silly things like that. No one took any pictures, did they, Laura? No. Anyway, but yeah, one of the great things about the pipe band is that every time it's being a village pipe band, really, isn't it? Because if you walk down the street in Inverary, nearly every shop that you went to, there was a little can to raise money for the band. The town got behind you and bought kilts. There was massive drives for you to win grants to get kilts and sporrans and the new waistcoats and jackets one year, and so it was a massive support. So in return, you always, every time you win the Worlds, what do? You come back and you play up the main street, don't you? And it's a massive crowd. But when you won the Worlds in 2017, we'll come back to bits and pieces. Remember the hoo-ha about trying to play up the main street?
Yes, that's right.
What was that all about? Just a little story about that.
Well, the rules are the local police. You're supposed to apply for a permit to walk up the main street 6 weeks in advance, but obviously couldn't predict that, you know. So the Duke of Argyll very kindly said that he would pay the fine. The local minister said he will do the jail time. So it was all go, and the police. There was a young fella very kindly let the whole parade go ahead. I think he got in a bit of trouble, but it was a wonderful night, amazing night in the town, just great atmosphere.
So the band's had an enormous amount of success. So, one of the things I'll touch on is you said something earlier about being 13th in your first competition. It was one of those things that we've spoken about a few times, and you pointed it out to me on the front page of the Piping Today. There was a picture of the band playing off after they won the Worlds for the first time in 2017, and it was 13 years to the day from when you started the band. So it's quite good. I wonder what's going to happen in another 13 years.
I'll be retired.
But with that success, how many majors now has the band won in grade 1?
That's a great question. I looked it up.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are at number 16. Is that right? 16.
Is that right, Greg? 16. We're 16 majors. So for a band that's only been in the top grade for since 2011 or 2010. 2010.
Yeah, right.
2010 in the top grade. It's now got 16 majors, as compared to say Field Marshal, who won 13 world championships, but they've won I think 70 majors, but they did it over 30 years.
Yeah.
It's looking pretty good for the band, isn't it? If they can keep going, it's good.
We'll stick in there. See how it goes.
So, from that success, you've had an enormous amount of opportunity to travel overseas. What's some of the places now that you're taking the band, and some of the good things you've done, like just recently on your way out to Australia?
That's right. Yeah. Well, we've taken a few jobs on concerts. In fact, we did a concert in Frankfurt this year and in Basel in Switzerland.
There's some people in the audience here that are supporters
right, yes.
from Basel and Switzerland.
Yes,
Martin and his
connections there, which is wonderful. Great trip, great for the guys to have something to focus on other than just competition. It was great bonding. So that was 2 trips we had. We went to Canada last year. A small group of us went over to the Alberta, I can't even say it, to the Stampede, and we did a little performance or 2 there. So
So what's the chances of getting, say, Inverary on the stage here in Brisbane? Do you reckon we could get that happening one day? Like, there's a brand new performance centre just over at South Bank. Do you reckon we could get a concert out here in Australia one day?
Do you know anyone that has an airline? Do you? No.
I'm working on it. It's my new job, right? We'll get on to that. Okay, let's move on to some of your solo influences. You started talking about that earlier, and you said Donald McLeod's a great influence, and that's probably because you play regularly up at the Donald McLeod competition at Stornoway. Just explain, a bit about that competition for people and some of the influences that you've had in your life from your music.
Yeah, it's the start of April every year. Unfortunately, I didn't manage it this year, but they run a wonderful contest. They invite 8 players to go. You play, I think they actually designate a pibroch for you to play, and then you play a double march to Spear and Rail, where you play a march that you would normally play in competition, and then one of Donald's tunes. Same with the Strathspeys, one of each, and one each of Reels as well. And then a hornpipe and jig contest. It's wonderfully supported locally there. It's just a great atmosphere, and it's great that we can showcase some of the wonderful tunes that he's composed over the years. I've had lots of major influences: Alistair Gillis, Gordon Duncan, Angus MacColl. There's been countless of amazing players, past and present, that have influenced the playing over the years. It's too many to count, actually.
So speaking, you've had these great influences over your life, and you're having a similar effect to the next generation of piping. You heard two of the pupils earlier that played, and they played tunes that you played, because everyone tries to replicate what you do, and including some of these funny notes that you do from time to time. Is that something in the back of your mind that you'd like to do because you're trying to influence, the next generation, a bit like Gordon Duncan did, because he was a massive influence on that side of things. But you see now kids are lining up to play the same tunes that you do. Is that something you think about when you're choosing what you're going to do next?
Not particularly, but it's very flattering actually to have that. It's amazing, and if it encourages the young ones, then fantastic. No, I think it's more. I get very nervous, so I just goof around. It helps me to sort of calm down a wee bit, I can't really leave tunes alone. I need to learn that. Just leave them alone and play them normally. But
yeah, I wish I could goof around like you, mate. But anyway, but more importantly, something that we spoke about earlier, and why I wanted you to play pibroch tonight, is that I try desperately to get the young fellas here and young ladies to play pibroch, and they don't take to it. But just say, how important is it if you want to be a great piper on our scene in Scotland, especially in Vanessa and Oban? How important is it to embrace that tradition and learn that music, and what sort of things that can lead to for you?
Well, it is the most important thing to focus on. The pibroch, you learn so many layered skills when you learn pibroch. Obviously the memory, the stamina, the tuning, but most important, the music, the technique, and yeah, definitely the music. Once you've started learning pibroch, you start appreciating a greater depth about music in general. So it was, to be honest, I was a late starter. I learned pibroch at a young age, but I was maybe about the age of 14 when it suddenly just clicked what it was all about, So pibroch is where it's at. If you ask me my favourite tune, it's going to be a pibroch. So aye. So for the youngsters out there, definitely do it. Just keep doing it. I remember 2012 it was. We went on a little tour along Route 66 in the United States. It was Angus MacColl, myself, Willie McCallum, Jim Kilpatrick on the drums, and Mike Cole on the bass. And we went to an Indian, they call it a powwow. I guess it's a Highland Games for Indians, And they hosted us amazing. They showed us all the skills like tomahawk throwing, making skins, and just dancing and all that kind of stuff. And we met this flute maker who showed us the flute he made that morning, and it only had about 6 notes, I think. And he went to describe one of the tunes that was handed down a few generations, and he started to play it, and we were all sitting around this sort of area, and it was mesmerised by it. Just I didn't understand it, but I got it. It was emotionally just incredible. And then so we decided to exchange, and we talked about Lament for the Children, how the sad story of one of the McCrimmons losing 7 of his 8 children through a disease. And Willie McCallum then went to play the ground of the Lament for the Children, and the gentleman, the flute maker, he closed his eyes, rocked back and forward and absorbed the tune, and he got it. I thought that was incredible because he understood the depth of the music involved, and we did with him as well. So yeah, so that's all that fancy stuff's great, but Peebrich is where it's at.
Put your hands together, lads. That's the most important. You're hearing that, Liam? Rightio, we've often spoken about, winning prizes is great, but it's about your best performance, isn't it? You've often told us in the pipe band is that every time that you play, you've got to play better than you did the last time. So what's been your best performance that you can remember? Because you've left a trail of awesome performances over your life, Carnegie Hall, a few other great Master Solos events, Inverness, Glenfiddich. What's been your best, when you felt the best performance?
It's a hard one to. I'm not sure. I think when I finished a performance, I'm quite glad that all the elements are kind of in place. You didn't miss anything too much. The pipes behaved a bit. You're just relieved to get through it. Yeah, if you look deep enough, there'll be little niggling wee things. I don't think there's any performance, to my mind, that I could say that was great. I would never do that, but certainly maybe relief or a certain satisfaction if everything goes relatively well. The bagpipe is an incredibly sensitive instrument, a moving target. It's really quite a difficult one to master. So just to be able to come off a performance and be relatively satisfied is good enough for me.
Again, I think half the room wishes to be satisfied like you most of the time. Anyway, let's move on to the most important thing, which is your bagpipe that you're providing now to be auctioned after you've played it for a few days, for 3 or 4 performances. You've spent a lot of time building that Duncan McRae bagpipe, and that's a direct replica of your pipes that you chased around for ages to find, then you got them, and then you made them better by changing the slides and all those sorts of things. Just how has that changed? Because I see so many pipe bands around the world now that are playing them, and you look at Inverary, I think nearly at least a third of the boys in the band now are playing your pipes. What does that mean, and why are you pursuing that?
Well, McCallum's have done a great job in duplicating the bagpipe. It's the old set I've got came from a local gentleman. They were lying in his loft.
Under a bed?
They were in the loft, yeah, for about 30 years, and he just stopped me in the street because he knew I was looking for pipes, and he offered me them, and I bought them. The original McRae's slides, the tuning slides, were metal all the way to the top. They were a little bit unsteady, so I took them to Sinclair in Edinburgh, and he removed the top parts of the 2 tenors on the bottom bass section, and so that he could put hemp on them. I left the top section of the bass on just to prove what they were, and they suddenly became super steady and with a great tone. Harry McNulty was in the shop then. We had new reeds put in, and it was just magic. So I had a lot of success with them. Beautiful set of pipes. I still play them in the band. And McCallum's have, I can't remember how many years ago now, but they've very successfully duplicated them, and I still play the first set they made for me in the solos, set number 1. It's great to see them being so popular. It's wonderful. The original set was made, I think, around about 1913.
There's 13 again, mate.
Oh, 13. So good for travelling as well. I don't think I would ever travel abroad with the original set, especially now with all the restrictions and things like that. So the new McRae's are great to travel around with, and the tone's really good. I'm really happy with it.
So something that no one knows, but you probably want to talk about now is the chanter that you played tonight.
Yeah.
What's so special about this chanter?
It's been many years in the making. We finally come up with something that I'm pretty happy with. It all stemmed from, Sabine. Sabina's a piper, my partner. She plays pipes very well. I gave her a shot of my pipes one time at New Year. It had a nail chanter in it.
The one that you won all your prizes
Yeah, I won the gold medal. She turned it at the bottom and it split between the D and the E. And anyway, a few years later, she was doing a bit of housework. My pipes were lying on a piano stool. The chanter was capped. She moved the piano stool. The pipes fell. And the chanter I had then, it was another chanter that had been quite successful. It remarkably split in two.
Perfectly. I've got a picture of it if you want.
Yeah. So that kind of, maybe it was time to sort of maybe explore the chanter. So I think after a few years, I've been trying a lot of things, but really quite happy with this one now. It feels nice on the fingers, nice and solid, good, stable, nice Piber high G, easy to work with. So yeah, I think we're on to something.
So Brisbane, you heard a world first of Stuart Little's new wooden chanter, and it will be available for sale. If anybody would like to inquire about it, please come and see me over the next couple of days. We've got a couple spare at the moment, but this is something new, and it's awesome that it was launched here in Brisbane. That's why the video cameras are on around the room, because we've promised to do a lot of recording for Kenny McLeod and Stuart McCallum at McCallum Bagpipes, because of a lot of support. But it's taken Stu a few years, and today was the first time it's been played in public. So I think put your hands together for Stuart. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a special surprise for you tonight. It's not just piping. We're very fortunate tonight to have the Oz Scott Highland Dancers here with us tonight. In particular, we've got Hannah Hughes and Amy Jimison, better known as Hughesy and Jimbo, I think, on the touring squad. These girls have travelled the world dancing, and right now we have a team that has just finished in Washington, and there's a team that's going to start in Virginia this weekend coming. So for the first time in a long time, there'll be no Roach women at the McLean gathering. I've got a very sore point in our family, but no, they'll all be in Virginia. But the Oz Scott Highland Dancers are
a fantastic group that have travelled the world. They've danced at the Edinburgh Military Tattoo several times, and including when it was in Australia, Belfast, Amman, Basel, Amsterdam, Virginia and Washington last week. But just last week, a team went down and danced at Scots College in Sydney, where they celebrated the opening of a new building, and they had a fantastic show down there just for the school community. But they're in great demand the world over, these girls, and they're known for having fantastic routines, and I wax lyrical about them because it's my mum and my wife that are involved with this. But we're very fortunate to have them tonight, so if we could put our hands together for Hannah Hughes and Amy Jimison, and we'll enjoy this next little dance. Certainly breaks up the piping. Thank you, Amy. That was awesome. Little side note there to that fantastic dance routine is that music was actually put together and recorded by the pipe major of St Andrews Pipe Band, Greg McAllister, who's sitting here in the front row, who's also doubling as a cameraman tonight. Hands together for Greg. He's tied up with a group called the Rolling Drones, so that they also travel the world. I think they were in Washington just last week as well, playing this. So the girls have often danced with the Rolling Drones around the world, so that's been great. Right, so let's get back to some piping. So our next piper, keeping with that great theme of what's happening here in Brisbane, is that Liam Doherty, a former BBC boy and former pipe major of the band. He's 20 years old, will be our next piper. Liam's really getting stuck into his piping. He's doing a lot of piping around the world. He's trying for solos and he's really pushing himself in the band scene at the moment as well. He's going to play 2 sets for us tonight. He's going to play Inverary Castle and the Piper's Bonnet, followed by the Sheepwife and Alec Cameron Champion Piper. And then he'll have a little break, and then his second set will be a slow air, and it's called Tune for Lottie. The next tune is, of course, been inspired by listening to Stuart Little. He's going to play Kaylee Lines, and then he's going to break into a couple of new compositions. The first one's called Morning Blossom by Lincoln Hilton, who's recently just finished up at Harlbury College in Victoria, and I think he's returned to his hometown of Port Macquarie. And the last tune is The Train to Glasgow. Liam wrote this tune last year when he was across in Scotland, and he's heading back across there this year. He's going to play with Manawatu, I think, in the Grade 1 arena, hopefully, if he makes it on the park, and then he's probably going to return and have a year or 2 in Scotland to further his piping, which, you know, I'll miss him, but it'll be great that he's heading across there to further his piping. I'm hoping he's starting to come out soon, because he's been tuning for quite some time. The pipes he's going to play on is a set of 1916 Hendersons. They've only been, I'm the second owner of these bagpipes. The first owner were given them by his grandmother. His grandmother went into the shop in 1916 and bought them direct from Henderson. I've still got the box, I've still got the receipt that's inside that box. And Liam's playing those pipes tonight, and he's playing it on a Colin Crow wooden chanter, which is hard to get, and I think all the drones are basically set up on easy drones. So I'll go and chase him up, but when he comes out, if you could put your hands together for Liam Doherty when he arrives.
the original set, but anyway. Please come out. I'm running out of jokes. Hands together for Stuart Little, MBA. Thank you.
Are you okay with me talking about the tunes? Aye. Right. 2 marches, both in 6/8 time, and both by the same composer, Pipe Major John Mackenzie from Campbelltown. The first one's called Tug Argon Gap, and apparently it was named after a battle that took place during World War II in Italy. The second tune is McNeil's of Ugadale. Ugadale is situated on the Mull of Kintyre. How am I doing, by the way? Is this all right? Aye, because yeah. Anyway, right. I'll continue now again with 2 Donald MacLeod tunes. This time I'm going to play hornpipes. One is Crossing the Minch, The Minch is a very infamous stretch of water between the mainland of Scotland and the Outer Hebrides, noted for sometimes its pretty heavy swelling waves, and you might hear that in the tune. I once played it up in Skye, dead round, really round, and I got told off by one of the locals, because you'll hear the pointing of the tune is supposed to be associated with the waves. And the second tune is Pipe Major George Allen. Now I believe, I may be just making this up, but I believe that the tune was inspired by Glenn Miller's In the Mood. Thank you. Right. A wee slow air now called Hector the Hero. And a bit of a tricky tune, Troy's Wedding, but arranged as a waltz. You just got to watch my foot for this one. And then a tune written by your own fellow countryman, Mark Saul. It's called The Stonecutter's Phoenix. It's a jig. Thank you. Thank you. 2 retreat marches, 1 in 3/4 time and 1 in 9/8 time. And does anyone know the name of the first tune I played there? Written by Jock McClellan of Dunoon, but the name escapes me. No? I'll buy you a pint. The second tune is very, very famous amongst the pipers. It's called The Battle of the Somme. I'm now going to play a very dangerous set now. It's 2 traditional tunes that have been untraditionalised by Pipe Major Alan Tully from the St Lawrence O'Toole. You might have when I finish this set, you might have a face like that at the end of it, you know. I don't know what that's all about. Anyway, it's 2 tunes. Traditional tunes are The Highland Wedding and The Cameronian Rant. The Highland Wedding is known as a 2/4 march, and the Cameronian Rant is a strathspey. However, Alan has changed them both into hornpipes with lots of grace notes. So if it gets a bit much, you're quite welcome to leave. I won't be offended. Anyway, it does showcase, however, because the bagpipe is 1 volume only, we do like to heavily embellish our tunes, and in this case it's put to great use, great rhythmic effect. You'll hear all the different sort of rhythm combinations in it. It's pretty cool to play. I'm not guarantee I'll get all the grace notes in, but anyway, here we go. The Highland Wedding and the Cameronian Rant. Thank you. Bloody pipes, eh? Orchestras do tune up in 2 minutes and play for 45 minutes. It's great. Pipes, pipe bands, they do the opposite. They tune up for 45 minutes. Anyway, right, here we go. It's a bit intense, eh? Is that enough? We'll do one more tune, eh? One more? Yeah. Aye. Another Pibroch, is it? I don't know if you... Well, I was going to play... It's up to yourself, but I was going to play another fancy set. This is called The Blue Cloud and the Mason's Apron. I don't know if... 100 years ago, I played it at Carnegie Hall in New York. A long time ago. 1998, actually. So, I'd like to present it to you now. So, from Carnegie Hall to Brisbane's Multicultural Centre. Aye. The Blue Cloud is it's a jig. Again, written by Adam Quinn, the fellow I mentioned at the start. He wrote this after his, well, the Americans call them the station wagon. What do you call it over here? What do you? Ah, right, sorry. A very old, clapped out one, and you'll hear it major and minor keys just jumping about a little bit. Obviously, the minor key is when it's not working so well, and the major key when it's going downhill. The blue cloud is the blue plume of smoke that used to come out. And the Mason's Apron is, it's been a favourite in the repertoire of pipers at Cayley's for a long time. This has about 10,000 parts in it. And aye. So, thanks very much for coming along, and here we go.